während M. Night Shyamalan-Film durch die
Ja.
Verarsche quasi abgeschwächt wird.
So,
Das
und
ist auch
da
schön.
ist es schon soweit. Das ist Chuck Palahniuk tatsächlich mit an Bord. Da ist auch Robert Milazzo. Ist der auch mit dabei? Oder wie? Oder? Ah, okay, es ist nur der Chuck. Okay, super. Dann ist ich mache mal jetzt hier die Zeichen auch weg. Ne? Weiß ja nicht, ob es jetzt
Hast du das
lustig oder
iPad
nicht
mal
lustig
liegen?
wird. Schau mal hier.
Da bin ich ja wirklich gespannt.
Oh,
Ich
schick
habe
ist er
gerade erst den
gekleidet.
Joe Rogan Podcast
Fantastisch.
mit ihm angehört.
Mm.
Sehr Kanal.
Ein adretter
Hi.
Bub.
I'm Marco, nice to meet you.
So. Ah, okay. So. Chuck, great to meet you.
Hi.
Please.
Marco, nice to
Seat.
meet
I'm
you.
Robert. Nice to meet you.
Robert.
Hi, I'm Robert. Nice
Great
to
to
meet
meet
you.
you. I'm Kevin. Please have a seat. So, das sind die beiden Herrschaften. Also Chuck Palahniuk und mit dabei auch Robert Milazzo. Er ist der Gründer der Modern School of Film. Die Herrschaften unterhalten sich nämlich hier auch auf der CCXP, auf der Thunder Stage und haben da eben so ein bisschen Unterhaltung. Ich denke mal auch über besagte Verfilmung. Und die beiden haben wir jetzt hier. Und erstmal, great to have you here. Chuck and Robert, my first question, I saw an interview, and in that interview you said, I'm constantly breaking the hearts of the fans when they meet me. People expect somebody, so not me. So who are you and what do the people expect?
I remember meeting one of my favorite writers for the first time. And when you meet someone like that, it is the ultimate confirmation that their characters are make-believe, that you are never going to meet the character that you love, that that character is never going to be your best friend. And so when people meet me, they would like to be meeting Tyler Durden. They would like to be meeting any of my characters, and instead they get this old man who is not going to be their friend. And I understand that heartbreak.
So when I ask, who are you? How would you describe yourself? Not as just an old man, right?
I'm kind of a bookkeeper of words. I have a decent memory, and I know how to put words together like numbers, and I know how to make them add up to something, but I'm really just an accountant of words.
Accountant of words. So, okay. So what kind of author are you? The more journalistic author, or how would you describe yourself? How do you work? How do you write the book?
I am sort of an experimenter. I want to see how I can structure a story differently than I've ever seen before, and how I can make it as tight as film, because film can be cut so tightly, and I would like books to be cut just as tightly as film, so that they don't take more of your time than necessary.
Okay.
I have to admit something. I consider Fight Club one of the best movies of all time. By that, it's one of the best stories of all time told by you. And I love this movie so much that I'm afraid to read the book. And I'm afraid to read the graphic novel, the sequel, and the other sequel, Fight Club 3. Can you convince me why should I read it?
Well, you know, that's why the book took forever to find an audience, because it's not written for the vast majority of readers in America are older middle-aged women. They are easily 85% of readers, and Fight Club is probably not their book. And the movie took years and years to find an audience. But each of them has its own strengths, its own advantages. And that's why I went to a graphic novel for a sequel, because people love the book and people love the movie. And if I did a sequel in either of those forms, it would be compared back to the original, and it would fail by comparison. So I had to move to a third form if I was ever going to have any kind of fair judgment of what the sequel would be.
You as a movie maker, did you read the book? And why should I read it as someone who is very into movies more than in books?
Yeah, I made a rule. I had a long flight here, so I had some time to make some rules apropos. And one of the rules is I won't combine my thoughts with the book and the film. I say that because I think they're two separate experiences, and that's a great thing. I think a lot of times fans are irrational. This is not news, and we like to combine. So what we really need to do when we read the book or see the movie is reset. I'm excited to talk to Chuck, as a movie fan, if that's even possible, about the movie. The book should be read because it's an extraordinary book. The film's existence and the book's power are two different forms of power. The theater of the mind is something film doesn't use enough of. So they're completely different experiences. So I will say one thing. I tell my film students, when you watch an Alfred Hitchcock movie, I don't want you to think of it as watching an old Alfred Hitchcock movie. I tell them, I want you to think of it as if you're watching his new movie. So if you see Rebecca or you see Vertigo, see it as if it's a premiere. They see it differently. So the great thing for you who have not read Fight Club is you read it as if it came out last week. And that's what's great about the work and great about the film. These works of art are individual and they've not lost any power. You will not be disappointed if you read the book as a lover of the film. You will only be grateful that they both exist.
But especially Fight Club works very well because if I read it or saw it already, every time I repeat it, it gets better. It's one of the few movies and books where the twist improves the story.
Yeah, I think, it's funny, I was thinking about 1999 when the film was released, and Sixth Sense was also released in 1999, and The Matrix, and not to pull them all into the same... American Beauty, and not to pull them all into the same sandbox, but there was something about how film and art has multiple effects. There's a movie called Rashomon, which changed cinema, that everything can be seen multiple ways. Fight Club is a film, and I'll speak as if Chuck's not here. I know people have seen it 10 and 20 times because it has a Rorschach-like effect. You can't see it twice the same way, like any great work of art, and that's why the book can be revisited multiple times. So those are the great works of art that you can really drop in and say, I see it differently, because they change as we change. I first saw Fight Club, it was my first time in Los Angeles. There used to be a discount movie theater on Hollywood Boulevard. I saw it for $2. Sorry, didn't put much money in Chuck's pocket, I apologize. Or anyone's, but I didn't have much money in mine. And I saw it, the discount movie theater was a beat-up movie theater. It was almost like a pornographic movie theater. It wasn't. It was the perfect way to see Fight Club. But I've seen it in other theaters and had a different experience. So like books, like movies, they change as we change.
Chuck, did you always like the movie? Or was there a time where you said, I'm tired of this shit, please? Just look at my book, read my book, and not always talk about the movie.
Yeah, I was, if anything, I was always intimidated by the movie, because the book was a product of one person who was very new at writing, and the movie was going to be the product of a lot of people who were very, very good at what they did, and had been doing it for a long period of time. So I really thought that it would be something like The Graduate, where people forget that there was a book, or Rosemary's Baby, where people never go back to the book. The Graduate as a novel is probably out of print, and Rosemary's Baby continually goes in and out of print. So I was afraid that Fight Club as a novel would suffer the same fate.
Was there a time where you've been sick of being called Chuck Palahniuk, the Fight Club author?
No, if I wasn't called that, I would be called Chuck Palahniuk, the guy that still works at Freightliner on the assembly line. So, no, at my age, I'm really glad I don't do that anymore.
Okay.
But do you struggle to write? After you had one of the best stories ever told, how do you? I really think that. How do you? Can you start a new book? How can you do that?
There's always a threshold. There's always some forbidden place that no other medium can go, and so that's why I love writing stories like the gut story that makes people faint. Is that there are things that fiction can do that no other storytelling form can do. And that's exactly why I keep going back there. Because I just love breaking that rule and doing that thing that movies can't do and that television can't do.
I just heard this morning, your Joe Rogan Experience podcast from 9 months ago, and you kept telling stories, and I couldn't stop listening to your stories. And you just said one very interesting thing. Most of the stories are betrayals of your friends who told you these stories, and you tell them other people. Is there one story you can tell now and betray someone with that, or you? One new story. Yeah?
Oh, talking to him.
Yeah, I'm talking to you too.
Oh my goodness! No, I do a podcast, and I just had a guest on Walter Hill. Walter Hill is a really great American filmmaker, writer, and talk about anniversaries. His film, The Warriors, turns 40 this year. 1979, The Warriors came out, and also he was one of the parents of Alien. We were talking about Alien this morning. Alien turns 1979 as well. Both The Warriors. We were talking, he wrote a film called The Getaway. The Getaway was written by Walter and Sam Peckinpah, great American filmmaker. And he started talking about Steve McQueen, and he said, the things that happened between Steve and I, or Charles Bronson and I, or Lee Marvin and I, that's between him and I. He said, for many years, people have been asking me to write a memoir, and I said, that's not what I do. And I don't want to speak for Chuck, because Chuck is an incredibly kind man. I've not known him long, but that's one thing that's anyone can deduce. I don't do my work to find stories about other people. That's not interesting to me. I came of age when it was really interesting to find out what was Stanley Kubrick like on a set, or what was this. When I was young, we had none of that information. We have too much of that information now. We have a lot of ancillary information. So I'm not trying to make your funny question into a kind of more serious thing, but I do find we often are concerned with the thing we're not supposed to be concerned with, and I think young creators suffer from that. We want to know that part because that part gets us interested. I mean, when I think of Fight Club and even not knowing Chuck, I mean, I'm interested in craftspeople, people who make great work, like great works of art that require work, and that's what I love about the movie. That's what I love about Chuck's work. Not to get back to that and not to deflect your question. There are so many things you hear, but none of it is of particular interest to me, to be honest with you.
Would you both like to see the Fight Club sequels transformed into a movie? Or would you say, no, graphic novel, that's it, no other movie?
It would be such a challenge to whoever made it. I can't see anybody really meeting that challenge.
Not even David Fincher?
Fincher's talked about doing other things with the material,
Yeah.
but he's never talked about doing a sequel. So I'll leave it at that.
Maybe an animated series? Something like that?
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Was the film popular in Germany? Was
Oh,
Fight
of
Club
course.
popular?
Of course.
I think over the time it grew. It was more popular.
Well, you guys are young. I mean,
I was 9 when the movie came out, so
well, that's my question. I mean, it seems to be attractive to your generation as young men. Do you find that people know of the film and the ethos around Fight Club is still interesting to German audiences?
I actually think it's the movie for our generation, especially now, more than 20 years ago, because of the society and how it changes and evolves. And it's even more, the IKEA sequence in the movie is getting more important every year. It reflects how the whole society thinks and acts. So it's getting better. It doesn't lose anything. I think you can ask any student in Germany if he or she had seen Fight Club, and they have had.
Wow,
of course.
That's fantastic.
It's like the Pulp Fiction. You know the poster. Pulp Fiction is the famous movie poster of all time, and after that, I think it's a soap from Fight Club.
The soap from Fight Club.
Yeah.
May I say one thing? Did you know Chuck speaks German?
You really do?
You do?
Well, what I found extraordinary, Chuck said something very subtly, which is actually amazing. Your memory is incredible, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
You studied German at some point.
Ich habe seit 2 Jahren bei der Universität Deutsch studiert, but ich habe so viele Deutsch vergessen.
Yeah.
It's vergessen, right?
Vergessen.
Vergessen. Ja.
Aber verstehst du Deutsch besser, als du es sprichst?
Genug.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you know, we don't usually do that. There's a show. It's not on the air. It was a favorite show a couple of years ago. It's called Wetten, das? And there was a man. His name is Markus Lanz. And always, when a celebrity was there, and he knew, they could speak one German word. He always said, "Oh, please tell us something in German." And then so, the audience applauds. So I think, I don't know. It's better to stick to the language you know best, right?
You don't have to be ashamed.
No. That's not.
because Sandra Bullock is German, actually. It's her native language. But she refuses to speak German to German journalists because she thinks her German is so bad now that she won't give it away.
So, Chuck, let's talk. Let's get away from this topic and talk about the graphic novel. How much have you been involved in the creative process of making the sequels?
I had no idea that a graphic novel was going to be part of every day of your life for years.
Really?
Yeah, it's years. It was a year writing it, a year rewriting the script, and then finding the artist, reviewing the art on a day-to-day basis. We're still getting, every day I get inks, or I get colored pages, or I get lettered pages, or I'm writing an ancillatory advice column for the book. But there's always something to do with the graphic novel every single day. So I never don't work on the graphic novel.
Oh, really? Okay.
I have a question. I need advice. I'm a YouTube creator, so I studied film, and I
My
use
condolences, yes. Anyway. Sorry, go on, yes.
I use the skills now to talk about movies. I make film essays, basically, so I know Sam Peckinpah very well. And but I struggle always to write my scripts. I like to say I love my words, but I hate writing down them. Do you have any advice how I can improve this the struggle to write the first word? That's my main problem. I have a blank page, I have a pencil or a computer, and I can't start writing the first word.
You know, I just wanted to say something, and maybe you can pick up. It's something you said, actually. You made a distinction not too long ago, the difference between writing and typing. This was interesting distinction, something actually I think you said Truman Capote had spoken about.
You said that about Jack Kerouac.
About Kerouac. So there's a whole, talk a little bit about that as a writer, because, you know, there are generations who think sitting in a coffee shop at a laptop is the way you start. But can you simply walk around and think as a writer? I mean, how do you start as a writer? What's the barrier, not the lowest barrier, but what's a barrier that a young person can surpass to start writing?
Go to a lot of parties. Go to a lot of parties. Because parties are a place where people are telling stories and they're competing with one another as to whose story is the best story. And you can steal the best story. Or you can tell a story and you can see if your story is the best story. And you can see how people expand on your story, because a good story generates more stories. Years ago, I went to a party when I worked at Freightliner, And my first day at Freightliner, my foreman on the assembly line told me to go and get a squeegee sharpener from another work area. So I went and I asked, and that work area cursed me, and they sent me somewhere else, and they sent me somewhere else. And after the entire day of being cursed and abused, I found out that there is no such thing as a squeegee sharpener. I told that story, and everyone at the party had a similar story that was better. People who work at Target are asked to find the shelf stretchers. People who work at restaurants are told to find the banana peeler. A man who worked in a brick-making factory was told to fetch a bucket of steam, and he spent his entire day burning his hands trying to carry steam around in a bucket. Everyone has, doctors have horrible stories. Oh my God. What cops do to each other, policemen do to each other, is hideous on the first day at work. So if you can tell a small story that generates a bigger story, then you have the entire party writing your book for you. And they're going to be so much better than you are just by yourself. And you'll have a good time.
That reminds me on the one sentence they changed from the book to the movie Fight Club. This sentence, what Helena Bonham Carter says about abortion, and David Fincher changed that?
Right. When I was writing the book, after the two characters have sex for the first time, I thought, what is the most sentimental thing she could say? And that would be, I want to have your baby. So since she is Marla, I thought, what is the least sentimental thing she could say? And that is, I want to have your abortion. And that line was so contentious. Even Brad Pitt went to David Fincher and he said, my mother is going to see this movie. My mother is very, very pro-life. Can we change it to anything? And they floated a lot of different lines. And finally, David Fincher came up with a line, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. And that's what they put in. And as soon as they screened the movie, Laura Ziskin, the head of production at Fox 2000, said, can we change it back? So not everybody was happy.
The story improved, actually. There are a lot of things where you would say it's better in the movie than in my book. Even George R. Martin said about the Game of Thrones series that the role of Shay is in the movie, in the series. Did you see the TV show? Oh, okay. There's one role in the TV show, Shay, which is really, really better and deeper in the TV show than in his books. Even he had a lot of time in his books to develop the characters. So is there one thing or more things in the movie where you say, it's better than in my book?
You know, when Fincher was first talking about casting, Courtney Love was living with Edward Norton. Mm-hmm. And she was really lobbying Art Linson for that part like crazy, taking him out to dinner. She wanted to be Marla Singer so badly. And talking to Fincher, it just seemed so natural. And Fincher said, no, it's really got to be cast against type. So I'm thinking Helena Bonham Carter. And more than that, I want her to look like Judy Garland did just before she died, with the sequins missing from her dress and her hair all sort of ratted and sort of emaciated. I want her to look like a dead Judy Garland. And I think David's was so perfect. His image for Marla was so perfect. It was much better than anything I ever could have imagined.
Oh, that's great.
Robert, what other parts of Fight Club, the movie, you liked the most?
Oh my goodness.
Or the part?
Let's pick
one
some
part.
that are in the book. No, you know, I don't look at movies that way. I've been ruined in the sense of this is my favorite, that's my favorite. In movies, you know, I always tell my students, I'm interested in words that have a bad reputation but don't deserve it. One word is tension. You know, we use the word tension and we think, oh, you're very tense. Movies use tension. You know, tension is just expectation. You know, that's really what they are. And I think what's incredible about Fight Club is, this is an odd thing to say, but the number of scenes is incredible. And because they really are all necessary. I've rarely watched a movie where I thought there was a part of the film that what happens if you extract it out. So the book or not the book is not really the issue. I love the way the movie is put together, and frankly, the movie is not under 2 hours. You know, it's nearly 2.5 hours. So for a movie of that length, it's extraordinary to not feel that length and to feel that everything is a necessary thing. And it's not simply because the movie is a puzzle, it's because the movie says something about the way we live. And if a movie can do that successfully, I'll stay there watching it forever. So there's not a favorite part and there's not a least favorite part. Every part is necessary because I also don't think movies should be looked at as good parts, bad parts. Everything is necessary. And if you know, I don't know what the original cut of the movie was, Chuck. I don't know if you even remember if there was an even longer cut. You know, we're also in the age of director's cuts and all these things. I'm fascinated by them. I think a movie can show itself too many times. I mean, Ridley Scott is still editing Blade Runner somewhere. And I'm a Blade Runner fan. And Blade Runner, the costume designer for Fight Club, was the same for Blade Runner and Fight Club, actually. So I think a director can touch a movie too much, and that's a different conversation. But I don't have a favorite because I think it's all needed. I think it's all, and even from the credits, which are amazing. And I will say one thing, a spoiler alert. I was thinking about the final credits of the movie. You know, how would Edward Norton be credited? And what I liked thinking about the book was he's credited as the narrator, and Brad Pitt is credited as Tyler Durden. And so I think the movie has extraordinary detail, as Chuck was alluding, casting, design. So I don't have a favorite. I think it's all wonderful.
That's a very important thing you just said, because the narrator, that he doesn't have a name in the movie, is perfect for me. It's perfect for the movie. But in the sequel, he has a name, Sebastian. Why?
Well, he has different names. He has a different name in the third sequel. So he'll have a different name in every single book. So effectively, he has, again, no name.
Oh.
So these are all just these kind of odd or pretentious names that he would have chosen for support groups. So none of them seem very authentic.
Did you just drop that there will be more sequels to Fight Club? More than 2 names?
Yeah, I don't see why not. You know, I enjoy writing it. I enjoy working with the artists. I love working with Cameron Stewart, the chief artist. I love working with David Mack, who does the covers. Why should I give up this working relationship with people that are so much fun?
I'm looking forward to this. I have to read it, I guess. But should I start with the book before I read the graphic novel?
You should start with a book. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
So that's your next project. You're sitting on the graphic novels, or are there other projects you're sitting on right now? You can tell us about?
No, I have a book on writing, which is kind of as much a memoir as about writing, and it is the best things taught to me by the best writers that I've ever met and studied with, and that comes out next January. And I have a novel coming out next year, a horror novel. And I have the Fight Club 3 compilation comes out next year. So that's 3 hardcover books next year. And I'm working on 2 television series. And that's a lot. Yeah.
That's really a lot. So thank you both. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Robert. Have fun at the CCXP. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
2 fantastische Typen. Das werden wir jetzt erstmal alles verarbeiten. Ihr gönnt euch ein kurzes Päuschen. Wir werden das ebenso tun und deswegen hier eine kurze Pause und bis gleich.